Whew, what a good setup. Hot Fuzz is such a good movie. Hey guys, Houston here, and today I wanted to talk about setups and payoffs in movies. They're some of my favorite things to see when I watch movies, and they can bring a whole new level of satisfying storytelling to anything. So what do I mean when I say setups and payoffs? In this case, I mean when a screenwriter or director establishes something early on in a movie and then uses what they've established in a later scene. An easy example of this would be when Rose learns to spit off the side of the boat in the middle of Titanic, and then uses this skill to get away from her fiance toward the end. Setup, and then payoff. Setups and payoffs can take place in any movie at any time in any place. Sometimes they're very long term, like when J.K. Rowling set up the Horcruxes years before they actually came into play in the Harry Potter books. Sometimes the consequences are more short term, like when a character brings something up at the beginning of a scene and then references it later on. Aaron Sorkin is the king of this, as this video from Lessons from the Screenplay can show you. The way I see it, there are about 3 different types of setups in film. Setups of an object, setups of a character trait, and setups of an environment. Let's look at the first one, setups of an object. You may or may not have heard the term Chekhov's gun. Nope, not that Chekhov. Basically, Anton Chekhov was a Russian playwright and short story writer who established a principle that's used a lot in movies today. His quote on it goes something like this: "Remove everything that has no relevance to the story. If you say in the first chapter that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it should not be hanging there." Chekhov's gun principle rings loud and clear in most stories today, and it's definitely got a vice versa element to it as well. On the one hand, what he was saying is that if we see a gun, or any significant object for that matter, in a story, it must be used at some point or else it didn't need to exist. But that said, the reverse is true as well, and it applies here more potently. If we do see a gun used at some point in a story, that gun needs to have been set up beforehand so that it makes more sense for it to be there in the first place. So, for instance, example, in 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I love so much I talk about it in almost every video, at the very beginning of the movie, like literally 2 minutes in, we see that the lead character Michelle is taking a bottle of liquor with her when she goes to get into her car. We hold on it for a while, so it has to be important. Fast forward about an hour and a half, and Michelle, finding the bottle in the car, then uses that bottle to make a Molotov cocktail to kill the alien. Okay, it's kind of dumb, I know. But it makes sense for the bottle to be there, and that's what matters. In fact, in the middle of the movie, we even hear Howard reference how when he got her out of the car, he didn't have time to get the bottle, which just further reinforces it to us that it's out there and will be used at some point. So yeah, this principle is everywhere, although some people use it better than others. Some other people don't use it at all. Remember when Inspector Bond just suddenly came out of nowhere flying a plane on the side of the mountain? Yeah, that wasn't a setup. That plane literally just appeared from nothing, and that's why setting up objects matters. Alright, number 2. Whew, I swear, every time I make a video, it has to be a list, doesn't it? Number 2 is setup of character traits. Take a look at Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Now, I like the film a lot, I think it's fun, I think the cast is endearing, but when people say Rey is too skilled at everything, like she just magically knows all these things, like how to fly ships and knows what Wookiees are and she can fight with staffs and all this stuff, they're not wrong to criticize that. This is because when a character has a unique trait to them in a movie, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes it can be useful to know why. Now, an argument could be made that some characters just are who they are and they don't need an explanation. We don't really need to know why Hiccup is so inventive in How to Train Your Dragon. He just is. And that's fine. But on the flip side, sometimes a character does something that's so extraordinarily unique, and you just wonder, how did they know how to do that? Why did they make that decision? That doesn't seem like something they would know how to do, or it doesn't seem like something that they would do. Just why did they do that? Did they just plug in a program like in The Matrix that suddenly allowed them to know Kung Fu? Example, in Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn is like an amazing acrobat and fighter, and she's great at punching people and hitting them with baseball bats and wrestling people to the ground. But like, why? Why? Where did she learn to do that? Did she take a karate class after she went insane? Did the Joker teach her? What? If we had some sort of expositional explanation for why she's so good at fighting, maybe it would make more sense. This whole character trait thing does not just apply to skills that they have, it also applies to decisions they make. Here's an example of the flip side when a setup is done well. In Captain America: Civil War, Cap decides to go against the government and refuses to comply with their orders. He does not trust them. On the surface, someone might go, well, but he's Captain America, he should trust the the government. He fought in World War II. And if we were talking about Steve Rogers from the first Avenger, you'd be right. But the thing is, in the movies prior to Civil War, specifically Winter Soldier, we saw Steve Rogers start to realize how shady and gray the government can be. And we saw him start to decide he didn't want to take orders from an organization he didn't agree with. So with that setup and the arc that's been going on in his prior movies in mind, it makes perfect sense for him to choose the side that he did in Civil War. It's a good setup, and the choices that the character makes are informed by it. Alright, last one. Number 3 is setups of an environment. Oftentimes in film, a character is placed into a new setting as they journey into an adventure. And because of this, there's a lot of exposition in which the rules of the world are explained to them. We see this a lot in movies like The Matrix, Inception, Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, and even Doctor Strange. Now, on the one hand, sometimes it can be cool to have a character enter a world they know nothing about and have what they find here constantly shock them and the audience. We can see this in movies like Alice in Wonderland. But in most movies, you need to set up the rules so that when things happen, they make sense. In any other movie, having a parachute drop out of the sky with healing medicine in it would be such a convenient plot contrivance. But in The Hunger Games, we've had it set up that the tributes have sponsors who have the ability to give them resources when they need it most. It makes sense in the context of the environment that the characters are in. In any other movie, it wouldn't make much sense for a flying car to show up outside your window with your friends there to rescue you. But in the Wizarding world, that kind of thing is pretty normal. And we know this because there was a whole movie beforehand that set up the environment and the universe. When things happen in movies that don't make sense, or when something seems convenient, that can often be because the rules of the world weren't defined or set up well enough. The Avengers is a great movie, but that bit when the Chitauri all just die when Iron Man destroys the mothership, it's convenient. And that's because there was never a setup for it. We were never told that that's what would happen when the mothership was blown up. So those are 3 types of setups and payoffs to watch for in movies and to try to nail when you're writing your own screenplays. A good payoff can do a lot for a movie, and it can show change as well. The reason character arcs work is because we set up the character as one thing at the beginning of a movie, say selfish, and then by the end we show them as another, like selfless. It's a setup and payoff system, and it's in almost every movie ever made. So that's that. If you're ever watching movies or writing your own screenplay for that matter, remember, a good payoff always needs a good setup. And on the flip side, a good setup always needs a good payoff. Oh, that reminds me of something. Thanks for watching.